Part 146. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 1456. Bendashu leader adds 3 updates. That's. Sarala raised her chin proudly. The corners of his mouth are raised high, and the corners of his eyes are slanted downward. If he were not in human form and had no tail, he would probably stretch it out and wave it twice. The person I like. The person I like must be great. She had been busy for a long time, her face was powdered, and her silver blue eyes were shining brightly. Standing in front of her mother, her toes patted restlessly on the snow, and her whole body turned slightly. I wanted to rush over and hang it around my mother's neck, but I also wanted to stand a little further away and let my mother take a good look. Hey, Mom, look, I've grown up. The female elf looked at Sarala with a smile. Look from top to bottom, look from bottom to top. She did not exert all her strength, and her silver blue eyes, which were darker than Zyrala's, did not turn into vertical pupils. However, the elder silver dragon has already seen something different in his vision. Strength. Surging power. The little daughter standing in front of her had extremely powerful power boiling in her tall and slender body. Compared with the dragons of the same age as Sarala, it is much stronger, and can be said to have outstanding strength. The older female elf smiled gently. Once upon a time, Sarala, who happily carried the package on her back and waved to them, "I'm going out to play. I'm going on a trip," was still a young little guy. When he stood in front of her, the power reflected in her vision was only as big as a torch. And it is very thin and has no foundation. You can tell at a glance that it purely relies on the instinct of the dragon to grow naturally. But now, Sarala standing in front of her, the power in her body had grown to the size of a bonfire. Vigorous, profound, and far-reaching. Obviously, in the decades she has been outside, she has gained not only pure strength, but also an unknown amount of knowledge and skills. Not to mention, the daughter flying towards them had grown to the size of an adult dragon. Based on her age, it would have taken another 20 or 30 years. The power beyond the normal rhythm of growth must mean the hard work and experience beyond the normal rhythm. How has Sarala been living outside these years? What the mother thought of, the father naturally thought of it too. The tall and strong male elf carefully observed his daughter, and his face darkened a little bit. Very good. I can't see it. You, the female elf laughed and was angry, and pushed him hard. Hurry up and get there. My daughter has come all the way back. I want to have a good chat with her, so I'll leave it to you. Maybe she was too strong, or maybe the snow was too slippery. In short, the male elf followed his wife's strength and slid out for more than 10 steps in one breath. He stopped in front of Gretel. He didn't talk to Gretel for now, but looked around, taking in all the people present. Then, he took big steps and walked towards Idion. Hello. I am Andrei Mysarolan Freskrit, Sarala's father and the owner of this territory. Thank you for saving our people. Please accept our heartfelt thanks. Gratitude. Idion raised his eyebrows and almost sprayed it back immediately. Boss, the dignity of the boss must be maintained. Going beyond the boss and talking directly to the followers is almost like stepping on the boss's face. And stepping on the boss's face, isn't that the same as stepping on the followers' faces? This is absolutely impossible. You must pull it back. Even if you can't, you still have to spray it directly in the face. What? Is the other party a legend? Is it the legendary dragon? So what's the matter with legends? As if no one is a legend, they also have 2 legends here. However, before the words were spoken, or even as soon as his expression changed a little, the corner of his clothes was pulled hard by a 11 itch. There was a heavy cough next to him, and Idion remembered belatedly. The tall male elf in front of him, or rather, the male silver dragon, was none other than Gretel's future father-in-law. And there is no father-in-law in the world who would like his son-in-law just because he comes up. Even for a legendary warrior like him, even for a girl like Ash Moonsong who left Evermeet Island and worked as a forest guard in the fertile forest for more than 100 years, her father still disliked him in every possible way. He wanted to take Ashu Isong out to sea, and when he traveled with Gretel, her father caused so much trouble. Hello, Mr. Andre. I am a follower of Master Nordmark. Gideon put on a smile, spread his left arm, and pointed in Gretel's direction. All our actions are based on his instructions. I really dare not accept your gratitude. Followers. Andre turned his head, stared, and took a deep look at Greet again. The human magician in his field of vision was about the same level as his daughter, maybe a little lower. Just like him, with a legendary following? Legendary level, elf warrior followers? And me, the maple tree lowered its branches, put down the savages and animals she picked up from the ground, and came over. The bright red leaves swayed and swayed, especially dazzling. I, Servilia, am also his contractor. We agreed that I will go to sea and take adventures with him. Our contract will last for at least 100 years. The male silver dragon narrowed his eyes slightly. A legendary warrior, a legendary ancient tree, all contractors and followers of that kid. What is this kid's background? When I wrote to Ophelia a few years ago, her reply still stated that Cyrilla was traveling with a young human mage, a low-level mage, a low-level nature priest. Of course, the legendary mage from Nevis, the legendary second level, the Thunder Lord of the Energy Efficiency Department, pays close attention to him and once wrote a special letter to ask for his help. So, is he a disciple of the Thunder Lord? Just being disciples doesn't seem to be enough for the two legends to follow. Could they be heirs? No, I have never heard that the legend of the energy evocation system got married, let alone that he has an heir. Even if he is an heir, he is not worthy of such a great effort by a legendary mage. By the way, when Diamond came back from Nevis a few years ago, he also mentioned that there was a good human boy next to Cyrilla. What was that boy's name? Greet. Gretel what? Is it the one in front of you? Diamond seems to have said that the young man was at best a cub, not much better than a hatchling. But now, the person standing in front of him has a power level that is almost the same as Cyrilla's. Did they change people on the way? No, he, as a father, knows Cyrilla's temperament very well. It's not easy to identify one person, and it's even more difficult to change someone after identifying one person. If it weren't for the substitutions along the way, then this young man would have advanced a bit too fast. All kinds of thoughts flashed through his mind. Andre smiled slightly, maintaining the courtesy of one legend to another legend, and shook Servilia's branch. Hello, Ms. Servilia. Welcome to my territory. Although it is cold here, you can still find places with plenty of sunshine. Please take root as you please, spread your branches and leaves as you please, and enjoy the sunshine and rain here. Of course Servilia shook the branches happily. The water in this place is very clean, and the soil is also very clean. I like it. However, it still depends on Greet's schedule and how long he will stay here. Are these two legends dominated by this young man? The male silver dragon raised his eyebrows. At this point, he was no longer tired of ignoring Gretel over and over again, but he still felt a little displeased with him. Turning his eyes, he looked at everyone present one by one. A female elf, a high-level barbarian warrior, a silver moon deer and a unicorn greeted each one, and finally looked at Gretel. Hello. Hello. I am Gret Nordmark, a magician from Nevis and a nature priest. Gret announced his home address with great care. I have been traveling with Cyrilla since the Blackgate Peninsula. I have relied on her many times for help. Thank you very much. Are we just traveling together? Andre narrowed his eyes again. Little guy, This is not what Cyrilla said when she mentioned you. I like Cyrilla, and Cyrilla also likes me, Gretel quickly added. It's over, the other person's face turns dark. What's next? Is it I'll give you 1 million and leave my daughter, or a short-lived human like you is not worthy of my daughter? Do not. Thank you for traveling all the way to bring her back after a long wait, Gretel finally said. Please come with us. It's a rare occasion and I want to entertain you for a few days no matter what. Hey, what kind of treatment is this? How are guests treated? Gretel boarded the airship with a ghost in mind, and followed the silver dragon with Iodian, Bernard and others, flying to the distant mountain peak. When they stopped at the top of the peak, Cyrilla had already taken her mother's arm and was pulled into the depths of the dragon's nest. André invited them into the dragon's nest with a half-smile, and settled near the entrance to entertain guests. Side room. A few half-dragons were left behind to provide them with all the necessary items. Then, the male silver dragon also hurriedly walked into the inner room of the dragon's nest and disappeared. I don't think this young man is good enough. Late at night, the couple lay side by side in the bedroom, whispering. Speaking of Gretel, André gave a negative opinion without thinking. He is a human after all. A human, a human. How many years can he stay with Cyrilla? When he gets old and dies, will Cyrilla be sad for hundreds of years? I'm not a simple human being. Cynthia, Cyrilla's mother, smiled. He has half-elf blood. Cyrilla just told me that his mother is one of the 12 elf nobles, the daughter of the Jewel Flower family. No matter whether it is noble or not, a half-elf can live for at least 300 years. That's only 300 years. 300 years is a long time. Besides, this kid Gretel advanced from level 1 to level 15 in more than 10 years. Let alone 300 years, give him 50 years, do you think he can do it? To the legend. That's what I'm worried about. When he reaches legend, this silly girl Sarah won't be bullied by him, right? Cynthia laughed out loud. The female silver dragon's tail turned in a circle, and she slapped her husband gently. You have been complaining to me before, saying why my father is making things difficult for you. Why is it your turn, exactly the same as my father? Thanks to Scarlacy for the 10,000 starting coins. If my father-in-law looks at his son-in-law, he won't like it. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 1457. Anyway, I just don't like this kid. André crossed his two front paws, rested his head on them, and muttered quietly. The so-called quiet voice is for the dragon clan. If a person stood between two giant dragons, his forehead would be buzzing. Even now, if the master bedroom in Dragon's Nest was not extremely large, with walls so thick that you could dig a separate room inside, and a soundproof barrier set up at the door, there would be no guarantee that outsiders would hear you. That is to say, thanks to the magic sound insulation, the two legendary dragons can lie down in the dragon's nest with peace of mind and whisper to each other. André was able to confide his dissatisfaction to his wife without any scruples. This child Cyrilla has no siblings in the same litter, only older brothers and sisters. She has always been naive since she was a child and doesn't care about anything. I am really afraid that she will be deceived. Come on. Cynthia flapped her dragon wings and patted him again. How can there be so many liars? Didn't Ophelia write clearly about the young man that Cyrilla likes? He is diligent, hard-working, compassionate, and a very good healer. Cyrilla, and with him together, nothing will happen. It's just the healers who are bad. André rolled over in annoyance, his belly turned upward. Rubbing his back against the ground, Longi turned around and patted his belly rhythmically. A good healer only sees other people's pain and doesn't care about himself at all. Look at today, Cyrilla went to save people, and the young man also went to save people. Everyone was busy from beginning to end, and he didn't even look at Sarah. When Sarah was with him, when she was unhappy, uncomfortable, or in need of care, the young man was only busy with his patients. Sarah felt so wronged. But the healer has a good heart and is pure and kind. Cynthia slapped her husband calmly, causing him to turn over and continue to rub his belly on the ground. Being with a pure and kind person, you feel at ease and at ease. If you were to be with a cunning person, you would have to worry about being betrayed. We silver dragons have good relationships in the clan and respond to everything. Isn't it half because we are healers? Now that your daughter is with a therapist, what are you dissatisfied with? Of course it's good if someone else is a healer, but if the person Sarah likes is a healer, then... Andre continued to mutter under his breath. Cynthia laughed, and before she could continue to persuade her husband, there was a crisp sound of broken glass, the sound insulation barrier was knocked open, and Sarah rushed in. Dad, Mom, what are you talking about? I want to listen too. Speaking ill of you. Cynthia laughed out loud. Sarah folded her wings and rushed straight to her mother, rubbing against her body. I'm the most well-behaved. Where are the bad words? Mom, I haven't been back for a long time. I want to sleep with you. Okay, let's sleep together. Cynthia opened her broad dragon wings and caged her daughter underneath, letting her put her head at the junction of her wing roots and body, and rub her slender neck against her. After pausing for a moment, he raised his tail and lightly slapped his husband. Get out. We, mother and daughter, need to talk privately. Let's go and find a place to sleep. When my daughter comes back, she doesn't want a husband anymore. Andre muttered and was kicked out of the master bedroom by his wife. I walked slowly to the door and heard my wife saying behind me. Come on, Sarah, let's continue talking about what we were talking about before. You just said that Gretel built a hall for you on the top of the mage tower. What next? Even the dragon's nest has been built for my daughter. For a little mage, how high and big can his mage tower be? I want to build a hall on the top to serve as a dragon's nest. With such a big house, Sarah can't even turn around. The more Andre thought about it, the angrier he became, and the more he thought about it, the more he lost. He simply walked to Gretel's residence and called a half-dragon who was waiting outside. Hey, how are they? The half-dragon jolted over. The so-called half-dragons are basically members of the barbarian and giant tribes at the foot of the mountain. Some have lived near the dragon's nest for a long time and have been tainted with the aura of the dragon. Some even have a little bit of dragon blood, but not much. The best among them work as servants in the dragon's nest, cleaning the dragon's cave, and serving the dragon's daily life. If something slips through the dragon's fingers, it is enough for them to live a good life and move up a level or something. At this moment, the two half-dragons were ordered to serve the distinguished guests. Naturally, they ran back and forth and tried their best. When called over by the master, he immediately bowed forward. We have all finished eating, bathed, and are ready to sleep. The two elves asked for some vegetables, fruits, and mushrooms. We said there was no more, and they didn't say anything. Mr. Spellcaster is still reading a book. He can actually read, Andre muttered. He wandered to the guest room where Greet was, raised his hand and knocked. Hey, Nordmark Mage. Your Excellency Andre, Greet put down the book and picked it up quickly. It can be seen from the interaction between Sarah and her parents that she has a very good relationship with her parents and has a very close relationship. The more this happens, the more he wants to leave a good impression on his father-in-law and mother-in-law. Although Sarah's father's nose was not a nose and his eyes were not eyes from the moment they met. Sit, Andre walked in swaggeringly. The door of the lounge nearby creaked continuously, and several heads poked their heads out one after another. He just pretended not to see it and sat down directly in front of Gretel. How is it here? Are you getting used to it? It's quite good. Thank you for the hospitality. Greet sat upright respectfully, put his hands on his knees, and leaned forward slightly. Andre snorted. Really good. The conditions here are probably much worse than your mage tower, right? Of course not. Greet apologized and said. The dragon's nest has a special style of dragon's nest. The energy density here is very strong. As a spellcaster, I feel quite comfortable. Besides, this is the place where Cyrilla lived. This alone offsets all the discomfort. Convenient. So you still feel a little inconvenient? Andre snorted. Boy, I already know about you. As a spellcaster, you have gone from beginner to advanced level for more than 10 years, and you are indeed quite good. But as parents, this is not what we look at, do you understand? Understood, understood, Greet nodded like a fool. As parents, especially parents of girls, when they want to marry off their daughter, they not only look at the man's high status and how much he can make money, but also how well educated he is and how handsome he looks. Poor parents in the world, their greatest wish is just for their daughter to be safe, happy, and prosperous. And a being like the legendary Silver Dragon, who originally stood at the top of the world and lacked nothing, has fewer and more pure requirements for his daughter's sweetheart. You hope that I will always like Cyrilla, be consistent with her, and be able to take good care of her, love her, and accompany her. I can do all of this if I ask myself, please rest assured. You can do it, Andre snorted, and his eyes turned into vertical pupils unknowingly, with brilliant silver light, and the pressure of the legendary silver dragon poured out with all its strength. Gretel sat calmly, with a sincere smile and unchanged expression. Yes. I consider myself a dedicated person. Once I like Sarah, I won't like anyone else and will always be with her. As for taking care of her, loving her, and accompanying her, these are all my duties, and I will not neglect them. Andre raised his eyebrows slightly. He squinted his eyes, looked at Gretel carefully, and looked at Gretel from the beginning again, the subtle runes in his eyes flowing rapidly. After a while, he nodded slightly. No wonder you are not afraid of my dragon power. You have the blessing of Ms. Silver Moon. But boy, do you think you can give Cyrilla happiness if you can be single-minded forever? Greet kept smiling and listened to him respectfully. Andre continued blowing his beard and staring. Cyrilla is a dragon, a dragon. She is now an adult dragon. Even if she plays every day and does nothing, she can live for at least another 1,000 years. What about you? 300 years? What will you do in 300 years? Manage. Well, I think I am too arrogant now to say that I can definitely advance to legend. However, whether it is resources, accumulation, or the blessing of the world, at least at this stage, I am still far ahead of my peers. Gretel smiled respectfully. Andre choked for a moment and felt that he had no way to refute. He blurted out. Then come back after you become a legend. I originally planned to wait until I became a legend, then come to meet you two and ask for your permission. Greet continued to smile. But if Cyrilla is coming, I can't stay behind. No matter how I heard this, I felt like I was taking advantage and acting like a good boy. Andre snorted, strode forward, picked him up, and half dragged him out. Even so, it doesn't mean that you and Cyrilla can always live well. Cyrilla is a dragon. She is a dragon. How are you going to be with her? How long can you last as a silver dragon now? Already? Well. Father-in-law, what you said is right, but I can't answer it. As your father-in-law, why are you asking about such things in such a roundabout way? Cyrilla is still young. She is still young, very young. Even if she has advanced, her current age is still decades away from adulthood, and she is not yet ready to decide on her own partner. Don't talk nonsense. Less than half an hour. But I'm only level 15 now. When I advance a few more levels, my strength will be strong enough. I can hold on for an hour, 2 hours, or a whole day. Okay, I won't ask you any more. Come on, come with me to the front and show me the changes in person. If it doesn't take an hour, I won't agree to it. Gretel. 1 hour. You are really like father and daughter. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 1458. Bendashu leader adds 4 updates. Only 23 minutes. Not even 30 minutes. Boy, you can't do this. You are young, you need to eat more and exercise more, so that you can grow faster and stronger. Andre waved his hand and walked out with a dark face. Greet followed quickly, and saw him walking faster and faster, wider and wider, and within a few steps, he was out of sight. Greet ran and caught up with him, only to hear a loud voice blasting from far away in the corridor. Sokka! Sokka! Tell them to hunt for a woolly rhinoceros. At least one at the level of a small leader. There will be one every day from now on. Or one of the same level and size. Until this kid can last until an hour, he will have it every day. What? Armored rhinoceros. One head a day. Gretel's legs went weak. Even if I become a silver dragon, I can only eat 1 pot of Warcraft meat a day, and it can't be the kind of pot that Bernard cooks for hospital security guards that can allow an adult to sit cross-legged in it. Now, 1 woolly rhinoceros a day. That thing was bigger and stronger than the rhinoceros in the south. It was conservatively estimated to weigh twice as much as Appa. The little boss level, that is, at least level 5 or above, has extremely abundant energy in the body. If I finish it in 1 day, I will have another one tomorrow. Help! My stomach is going to explode. With a grimace on his face, he shuffled towards the guest room step by step. When he reached the door of the guest room area, everyone led by Udayan had already greeted him, and they all looked at him with a smile. When Gretel came over, Idian was the first to clap vigorously. Greet's shoulders were slumped, his eyebrows and eyes were drooped, and he looked at him with a depressed face. You heard it too? I heard it. Sarah's father is very kind to you. Idian pulled him in with a smile and sat down at the long table. It's not easy to hunt woolly rhinoceros one after another, even if it's a dragon clan. Hunting so many magical beasts in the territory will cost you a lot. Adult dragons and their children will be kicked out of their territory when they grow up enough, and they are not allowed to hunt in their own territory. Now I have to provide you with 1 head a day, which is really good for you. I know too. Greet sighed sadly. It's freezing in the north, and the place where the silver dragon lives is vast and sparsely populated, and the products are even more barren. With just 1 instruction from Andre, I don't know how far the half-dragons below will have to run. Even in a fertile forest with rich water and heat resources and conditions similar to tropical rainforests, if they want to find so many monsters, the elves would have to break their legs with the natives. As for the Northland, just looking at Siberian tigers, an adult male tiger needs a territory of 1,000 square kilometers to support itself. Dragons are considered top predators, and their territory is more than 10 times larger than that of Siberian tigers. They can't afford to eat like this. How many tons of monster meat a day, father-in-law? Your love is so heavy that I can't bear it. Even if you can't bear it, you have to work hard to bear it. Greet was ready to work hard to improve his tolerance, and work hard to satisfy Cyrilla and his parents. Early the next morning, Greet got up and got ready to run. As soon as I finished warming up, there was a lot of noise and wind blowing outside, like 2 large planes rumbling and landing. Greet stretched out his head, and his eyes were immediately narrowed by a strong wind, and his hair was blown straight back. Although he is always covered with protective spells, the protective spells are not activated at all times. It's just a cold wind. If the wind is a little stronger, the protective spell will not react automatically. It will only paralyze him lifelessly, blowing him into a large feather duster. Boss, what are our plans today? Bernard stepped forward and stood in front of Gretel, his door-like torso blocking him solidly. It wasn't until the wind passed that he turned around to ask. Gretel raised a mage's hand and turned it into a comb, combing his hair quickly. You have to meet Sarala first, and talk to her before you can make the next step. Whether to live in the dragon's nest all the time, or to pick a place outside to build a temporary mage tower, to go out to live with Sarala, or to live near the dragon's nest and come over to see each other every day, all this must be discussed first. Adult dragons generally do not live with their parents, especially in dragon nests for a long time. However, this long time is not the long time of human beings. The concept of time of dragons is different from that of humans. Forget it about Idian, Maple Servilia needs to find a place to settle down. The legendary ancient tree has a lot of demand for resources. Bernard, Sister Uge, and APA all have to find a place to continue to hone themselves. If there are any strong men from nearby tribes that you can visit or spar with, you should ask them in advance. As soon as he said these few words, the howling of the wind outside stopped, and for a moment, it turned into the sound of rapid footsteps. One is heavy, the other is light, coming straight towards the guest room. Before anyone arrives, the sound comes first. Mage Nordmark? Mage Nordmark, are you there? Gretel hurriedly walked out to greet him. After turning a corner, I saw two elves, a man and a woman, walking forward quickly. The male elf is slender and wears a silver robe. At first glance, he looks quite similar to the mage who comes in and out of the Tower of Babel. The female elf's appearance is somewhat similar to Sarala's, but she is several years older. Wearing a pure black leather armor, she outlines a graceful figure, with a fiery red cloak flying behind her, making her look heroic and radiant. Even though he had the appearance of an elf, just by looking at the aura coming towards him, he knew he must be a dragon. Gretel agreed, and the male elf smiled slightly and stretched out his hand. Hello. My name is Vaska Hopgoodfriend, Sarala's brother. Hello, I am Gretel Nordmark. Gretel quickly went up to shake hands with him. The two hands touched lightly, and there was a soft crackling sound. Greet's whole body was shaken, and he took half a step back. Who is this? Who are these people? The spells that come with it are not the ice type, floating spell, or feather falling spell that Silver Dragon usually controls, but are actually lightning type. Fortunately, he followed the teacher and had anti-electricity magic solidified on his body all year round. Otherwise, he would have been burned just by shaking hands. What are you doing? Next to Vaska, the female elf in leather armor slapped the male elf's arm angrily. Vaska laughed. It's okay, I'm sensible, I just want to give him a try. Well, the young man I like is really good, and my reaction just now is very good. That's for sure. What do you think of me, little sister? The female elf patted him again and stretched out her hand to Gretel. Hello, I'm Yelena Goldsheim Greet, Sarala's sister. Nice to meet you. Hello. Gretel shook her hand exactly the same. The female elf's palms are slender and powerful, and the surface is covered with a thin layer of cocoon. She obviously holds weapons all year round. Yelena shook Gretel's hand hard, then let go, looking up and down. Are you a spellcaster? Very good. Spellcasters can walk longer and further. But martial arts cannot fall behind. The most guards around a spellcaster are not as good as their own. How are your martial arts skills? Find time another day and let me practice with you. I am a healer. Greet sweated. My brother-in-law is not easy to mess with, and my sister-in-law is not easy to mess with either. My martial arts skills are only at the level of a knight. If you want to fight with your sister-in-law, should you change your shape and fight her? Transforming into a bear, wolf, and leopard is basically just asking for a beating. Transforming into a silver dragon, well, turning into a young silver dragon means getting beaten. As an adult silver dragon, I can only last 20 minutes. By the way, where is Cyrilla? He bit the bullet and turned from defense to offense. Yelena raised her eyebrows and smiled. She just came back and she has to sleep in anyway. Be patient. When she wakes up, she will meet you naturally. Don't worry. Sleep in. The laziness of the dragon clan. Do I have to wait a few days or a few months? Although it is not like sleeping for several years like when I advanced, sleeping for a few months is enough to make me worry. Greet didn't feel comfortable speaking, so he only tilted his head slightly and looked back from Elena's shoulder, eager to see Cyrilla. Yelena saw his expression in her eyes, and without saying anything, she raised her hand and said, "Healer? That's even better. Come on, let's go out for a walk together. Healers are always useful, and everyone, please come too. We arrived in a hurry last night. You haven't seen anything around this dragon's nest yet. Have you been shopping?" Greet only left a hurried note for Cyrilla and was dragged out. Udian and others rushed out and looked around outside the dragon's nest. There were solitary peaks, thousands of walls and mountains and valleys at their feet. By this time, the weather had turned cooler, and layers of golden, reddish-brown colors spread all the way to the end of the sky. Just after he looked around, he received a heavy slap from behind, causing him to lean forward. Vaska jumped out and transformed into a giant dragon in mid-air. The roar of the dragon was like thunder. Come on, try your hand at me. Don't worry, you can't hurt me, just come." As he spoke, the sound of wind caused by the flapping of the dragon's wings made Gretel unable to stand Greet's side, held the oak staff, raised his hand and pointed. Chain lightning. Too weak. Come again. Fireball. Fireball. Exploding fireball. Delayed bursting fireball. Too weak. Just these 2 moments can't protect Sarara. Come again. Alas, you can't use liquid nitrogen to increase the power of chain lightning, you can't use pure oxygen to increase the power of fireballs, and you can't use any of those methods to increase the power of spells, lest you beat your uncle to death. It's so hard for me. Become a silver dragon. Go up and fight. Before he could finish his sigh, another commanding voice sounded behind him. Gretel turned his head and smiled even more bitterly. Father-in-law, when did you come? Why didn't the mother-in-law come? Are you still sleeping with Sarara? There was no other way, so he bravely activated the transformation technique and jumped into the air. However, his fighting ability in these 2 attacks was far inferior to that of an authentic adult silver dragon, and he was beaten to disgrace in just 2 attacks. Panting, he fell to the ground, and then turned around to see a group of half-dragons carrying a woolly rhinoceros to the top of the dragon's nest. Set the fire. Set the pot. Hurry up. This heavy love is really going to hit my stomach. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1459. Sarala nestled in her mother's arms and slept until the sky was dark and the sun and the moon were dim. After sleeping for who knows how long, he turned over and rubbed his mother's neck with his neck. Ah, it's better to be with Mom, I haven't slept so comfortably for a long time, I still want to sleep. If you want to sleep, just sleep a little longer. Cynthia covered her daughter with dragon wings and pulled her into her arms. No matter how fun it is outside, there is always no peace of mind at home. After finally coming back, I can sleep as long as I want and eat whatever I want. Well. Sarala made a soft nasal noise, hummed and rubbed herself into her mother's arms, rolling around again. Smelling the familiar cool breath of her mother, she closed her eyes with contentment. It's not that she's really that sleepy, she just wants to hum a little longer, and make sure she has the right to hum like this at any time. Even when she becomes an adult and travels, she is still the baby in her mother's arms. Hug me if I want to, rub me with me if I want to, and act like a coquettish girl if I want to. Mom and Dad will never push her away. Mom, I'm hungry, I want to eat walrus, seal, the kind that fills my mouth with fat in one bite. I also want to eat woolly rhinoceros, and I have to skin and remove the fur, and make it clean. And eat big fish. Big fish. The kind with crunchy bones. Okay, okay, I'll give it to you, I'll give it to you. Cynthia patted her daughter gently and agreed repeatedly. Cyrilla is her and Andre's youngest daughter, and in recent decades, their only child. Cyrilla laid a total of 4 dragon eggs in this litter. After cherishing everything and being cautious, everything that could be supplied was provided, but only 2 were successfully hatched. And even if it hatches successfully, the other little dragon has not awakened its true name. Without a real name, there is no wisdom. It is just a confused dragon beast and cannot be counted as a member of the dragon clan. She and Andre have already entered the legend, and the chances of having another child in the future are already slim. Even if she lays more dragon eggs, they will become increasingly difficult to hatch. Perhaps, Cyrilla is the last child between their husband and wife. Of course, such a little princess must be pampered and given everything she has. By the way, there's Gretel. Cyrilla rolled again, becoming more sober, and her sanity gradually returned. He raised his head and looked around. Where is Greet? Where are the others I agreed to have dinner with? How long have I been asleep? It didn't take long, maybe 5 days. Cynthia patted her daughter lovingly. It's okay. Your brother and sister are back, and your father is taking turns accompanying him. Don't worry, I won't neglect him. Cyrilla slowly opened her mouth. 5 days. 5 days. I left Greet alone in the hands of my father and brothers and sisters for 5 days. Gretel won't be bullied. When he came back before, the way his father looked at Gretel was quite unkind. She scrambled to her feet, scratched the ground with her wingtips, and rushed out. After taking 2 steps forward, Cynthia stepped on the tip of her tail. Stop. Ouch, ouch, it hurts. Cyrilla was so painful that she almost burst into tears. She flapped her wings and turned to look at her mother angrily. Cynthia had no intention of giving in. Shake off the gold coins from your body. There are also silver coins. Don't think I can't see them if they are embedded in the cracks of the scales. Ugh, I didn't mean it on purpose. Cyrilla shook her body vigorously and heard the sound of jingle, jingle, gold and silver coins falling on the pile of money. Before the tip of her tail was released, she had to circle her wings, flap, and pick at them. It took a long time before she finished cleaning the last silver coin. I really didn't mean it. It's not like I don't have money. I have money. Lots and lots of money. In order to show that she was rich, she ran to the corner of the bedroom, spread her wings, and swept out a blank ground. Followed by jingling bells and crashing sounds, large swaths of silver coins poured down, forming a small mountain in the blank corner. Look, this is my bed. The bed that Gretel gave me. It's enough for me to sleep on. Gretel also gave me so many more. So many gold coins. So much gold. So many gems. In an instant, Cynthia's silver blue eyes turned into the exact same color as silver coins. The legendary silver dragon naturally has no shortage of wealth, but pure gold and silver coins, which are human currencies, are another matter. Besides, any treasure, even a small copper coin, will be difficult to pull out once it gets into the dragon's eyes. What's more, It's such a huge pile of silver coins. A pile of silver coins that was enough to cover Cyrilla's body and serve as a bed for her. Relative to Sarah's age, that's a lot of silver coins that far exceeds that. Before her mother rushed over, Sarah waved her wings quickly and collected all the silver coins, determined not to leave any outside. Then, he took a detour past his mother and rushed out. Greet. Greet, where are you? I overslept. I'm coming to find you. Her voice gradually faded away and disappeared into the corridor. After a while, Andrei slowly walked out of the shadows, walked to the corner where Sarah had been just now, lowered his head and rubbed the silver traces on the stone. She actually has so much money. That's not all. Cynthia shook her tail, drew a circle in the corner with her tail, and then circled back to carefully observe the tip of her tail. She told me before she went to bed that the young man gave her many, many, many treasures. All the resources needed to break through from the bottom to become a legend were exchanged for treasures, and all were given to her. His. Andrei gasped as if he had a toothache. Legend, legend, a resource that leads directly to legend, was given to Sarah. He was not even so generous. Even for him, such resources will be broken down into territory, population, monsters, energy, and various magic resources. If you exchange it separately and exchange it for treasure, how can you have so much money? So much money belongs to her. Cynthia looked at her husband warily. Whether it's her own or the young man gave it to her, in short, if it's given to her, it's hers. Even though you are her father, you are not allowed to touch it, not even a single copper coin. Look what you said, I am her father after all. How could I snatch my daughter's things? Andrei smiled coquettishly, wagging his tail again. Compared with that young man's handiwork, as a father, his level of action seems to be a little too low. How much is a woolly rhinoceros worth a day? Even if the donation is for 100 days or 1 year, how much is it worth? No, you can't look poorer than your daughter's sweetheart, you can't be too stingy. Otherwise, where would he and Cynthia, a pair of legendary silver dragons, put their dignity? Saka. Saka, he strode out. Clean out my treasure trove. Get a batch of potions specifically for little dragons to increase physical strength. Get 30 copies first. At noon that day, Gretel's extra meal was mixed with a special potion. The half-dragon in charge of cooking picked up a wooden ladle, scooped it out fiercely, and poured it into the meat pot. The ochre-colored medicinal powder, or what looked like a scoop of ochre powder, was stuck on the surface of the piece of meat that was larger than a human head. The bits that fell into the soup melted when they met the water, but the more parts were piled on the meat pieces and did not dissolve at all and did not penetrate into the soup at all. What is this? Is this thing edible? The half-dragon didn't look too concerned. The two of them worked together to remove the meat pot from the fire and put it in front of Gretel. Gretel leaned down slightly and took a careful sniff. Ah, sneeze. What does it taste like? It hurts the nose. With this sneeze, the medicinal powder on the surface of the meat was immediately blown away. Gretel burst into tears. From the corner of his eye, he saw a half-dragon licking his fingers quickly, touching the ground where the powder was scattered, and then sucking his fingers quickly. As for what? My distinguished lord, please have a meal. The half-dragon man in charge of the spoon bowed his body respectfully and pointed to the meat pot. These medicinal powders are added according to the master's instructions. They are good for your body. The master ordered that 1 portion a day must be eaten. Greet sighed and started eating honestly. Facts have proven that no matter what delicacy it is, as long as it is powdered and added in large quantities, it is not very pleasant. It doesn't matter if it's dry chewing coffee, dry chewing milk powder, or dry chewing instant noodle seasoning packets. This newly added potion is bitter, spicy, smelly, and has an indescribable fishy smell. It felt like canned herring and Eskimo pickled puffin mixed together, as well as snail powder and beef belly, concentrated 100 times, collectively attacking his palate. Gretel really didn't want to eat it. Nay, he looked at the envious eyes of the two half-dragons and knew that this kind of thing was very precious and could not be obtained casually. He could only swallow the meat covered with medicinal powder in big mouthfuls, and then drink a few mouthfuls of soup to wash away the strange smell. Then, he would try to eat meat and drink soup again, trying to make the smell of medicinal powder disappear quickly. Eat fast, eat more, train fast. It's a knife to stretch out the head, and it's a knife to shrink the head. The sooner I can hold on for an hour, the sooner I can escape from the sea of suffering. Well, it's so hot, I feel like my whole body is heating up. The effect of adding medicated powder to the meat is truly unique. Greet had only eaten half of the pot of meat when he felt warmth rising from his stomach and reaching all his limbs. The front paws, back paws, nails, a pair of dragon wings, and even the deep muscles are rolling with powerful force. It was itchy under the scales and in the seams between the bones, as if they couldn't wait to grow quickly. I'm going to fly around again. It's so hot. I really have to go flying around again. He changed from the young dragon form to the adult dragon form, spread his wings, and shot straight into the sky. The cold frosty wind blew on my body, and the scales on my body were opening and closing, and I felt a little more comfortable. Gretel, come up. Come on, let's fight. Amidst the roar of the dragon, another adult silver dragon fluttered its wings and flew alongside him. Gretel let out a heartfelt cry. No, why come again? Thanks to Atmufenglang for the 100 starting coins reward. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 1460. Bendashu leader adds 5 updates. During the 5 days that Sirara slept in, Gretel truly lived a life worse than death. Eat, practice, fight, get beaten, the transformation time is up, rest for a while, eat again, practice again, fight, get beaten, support until the time limit, go down and rest a little, and start the cycle again. Naturally, a woolly rhinoceros cannot be eaten in a day. Even if it transforms into a silver dragon, it can only eat a third of it at most. Even so, he clutched his stomach and groaned every day. He wanted to turn into a young silver dragon and fly dozens of times around the dragon's nest to eat some food. Just because he can't eat it doesn't mean that the food below won't be served. That group of half-dragons were the guards and servants of the dragon's nest. They only knew how to act according to the instructions of the dragon master, one day at a time without compromise. Not to mention that Greet had only been eating for 5 days, even if he had been eating for 50 or 100 days, there would definitely not be a shortage of magical beasts until someone came up to speak. Most of the woolly rhinoceros was cut into pieces to serve to the guests, and the rest was piled in the kitchen. These half-dragons have endured the power of the silver dragon and are good at controlling ice. The kitchen is frozen solid, and there will be a fresh one tomorrow. No matter what, we must not neglect our distinguished guests. Gretel could not escape, nor could he fight. Cyrilla's brothers and sisters practiced with him every day, and they must practice until he was exhausted. After holding on for 5 days, Cyrilla finally woke up from her sleep. Stop it, don't fight it. Cyrilla flapped her dragon wings and rushed forward, blocking the gap between Greet and her brother. As soon as he reached mid-air, Greet lost his strength and transformed from the silver dragon back into human form. He swayed before falling. Cyrilla circled her tail, lifted Gretel onto her back, and turned to look at him. Seeing him panting, with the strands of hair soaked and sticking randomly to his forehead, I felt angry and distressed at the same time. Brother, you bullied him. I'm angry. A mouthful of ice dragon breath burst out from the air, followed by wing beats, claw strikes, and tail lashes, sending Vasca spinning around but unable to fight back against the little girl. Even if the little girl has advanced, She is more than 100 years younger than them. He has watched her grow up since childhood. From a tiny dragon egg, to a waddling little girl who could barely walk, to a pretty little girl. When he was about half grown, he carried his luggage, held his head high, and said seriously that he was going to travel. For a little girl like this, all she needs to do is spray her once and scratch her twice. She won't be able to hit her anyway, and it won't hurt even if she touches her side a little bit. If you really want to fight back, how can you bear it if the beating hurts her? He was spinning back and forth in the air, constantly dodging, and occasionally letting the little girl get a little bit of it to prevent her from getting angry and losing control of the fight and hurting herself. Well, this dragon's breath has improved, this chain lightning is very beautiful, this ice claw is very good, this water spout is controlled very delicately, this ice and fire storm. Cyrilla, when did you learn so many spells? Although your spell strength and control ability are still much worse than mine, your ability is already very good. After a long time, there was a dragon roar at the door of the dragon nest below, and Yelena rushed up, spreading her wings to block between her brother and little sister. Xiaoun rolled up a whirlwind and blocked Cyrilla's waterspout. Okay, Vaska didn't bully Gretel on purpose, it was his father who asked him to practice with Gretel. It would be good for you to let him last for an hour, wouldn't it? Calm down, if you keep fighting, Gretel will fall off your back. Nonsense. I don't know how, Cyrilla yelled angrily. While he was shouting, his movements slowed down and he looked back at Gretel. Greet hugged a thorn on his back and sat calmly, not looking like he was about to fall down. Seeing her looking over, he still had the energy to nod to her. However, if you look closely, Greet's face is indeed a little pale. I don't know if it's because I'm tired, or because she was carrying her around in the air for a while, but I feel a little nauseous and want to vomit. Thinking of this, Cyrilla restrained her movements and floated steadily in the air. His hands stopped beating, but his mouth was unforgiving. He turned his head away from his face and glanced at his brother out of the corner of his eyes angrily. Gretel doesn't need to practice these things. Gretel has always advanced so quickly, and he has never relied on these. I want him to advance quickly, I want him to last longer, and I want him to be treated. Go study it. Treat. Research. The two adult silver dragons looked at each other. The growth of dragons from young dragons to adult dragons is basically the result of natural growth. Even those who work particularly hard are still training themselves in learning spells, learning martial arts, and constantly hunting and fighting. If you really want to start a research project, it will basically be done after you become an adult. That has to be a dragon that takes the path of a spellcaster, a warrior, and an adult dragon. To be honest, there is nothing to study. Just like their brother and sister, although they left their parents in adolescence to establish their own territory, it was in adulthood that Vaska began to study magic. As for Yelena, who prefers fighting, she is still fighting in the ice sea, in the strong wind, and in various dangerous places to temper herself, hoping that one day she can help her parents. Research. What is there to study as a warrior? How old is Gretel? How long had he been studying to barely reach the adult dragon stage? Does he need to rely on research to advance? Is his research valuable enough? Treatment. Research. Below the dragon's nest, a deep voice rumbled. As he spoke, the huge legendary silver dragon flew up and stopped in front of Cyrilla. Have you always relied on treatment and research to advance? Now that you are here, do you have any plans? Do you have any research directions? Well, Ophelia and Diamond both mentioned this boy's research prowess. I have indeed seen his name in Nieves Arcana and Magic, as well as journals from previous years. But the further you advance, the harder it becomes to find new and valuable enough research directions. Doing research on Long Island is not that easy. Andre flew in front of Cyrilla, but his head turned slightly, looking over Cyrilla's neck and looking at Gretel sitting on her back. Greet held onto the thorns on Cyrilla's back and climbed up, bowing slightly to her future father-in-law. There are no new plans and research directions for the time being. I still need to take a walk here to understand the situation here and understand what everyone's needs are. However, there is always no problem with treatment. The surrounding ethnic groups, no matter what, have treatment needs. The premise is that you first let me find a place to settle down, build a mage tower, and then let me walk around. Andrei lowered his head slightly, narrowed his eyes, and looked at the human standing on his daughter's back who was smaller than a thorn. Although he is small, when he looks up at himself and talks, his momentum is not low at all, and he looks confident. He nodded slightly. When you come here, treat this place as your own home and feel more comfortable. Whether you want to find a place to build a mage tower or want to treat the surrounding tribes, it's up to you. However, you can't stop practicing and you can't be lazy. This kid has been trained by him for 5 days. Although he complained a lot, he never begged for mercy or slacked off. He did have a lot of toughness in his bones. Moreover, if he didn't really like Sarah, he probably wouldn't be able to endure such high-intensity training. Even if he could endure it, he would definitely have complaints. In this case, let's do what he wants. If you don't raise your hand, my daughter will make a fuss. Okay, okay. Remember to practice. Definitely. Greet nodded like a pound of garlic. Emma finally escaped, and she no longer had to be forced to turn into a silver dragon or run around in the sky every day. Long live Cyrilla. Sure enough, Cyrilla is in the spotlight. Whether it's my father-in-law or my brother-in-law, I'm embarrassed to train him like this. It's great to be back in the rhythm he's familiar with. It's great to be able to go back to open a hospital, or at least a treatment center, and see people every day. It's great to be able to travel around the world, see various races, and treat different races, dwarves, barbarians, orcs, elves, and now dragons and half-dragons. Okay, then you do what you want. Sokka. Follow them, show them the way, and provide them with convenience. If any tribe doesn't let them in or build a mage tower, I'll give them a beating. Yes, master. On the ground, the half-dragon captain shouted loudly. The huge silver dragon soared in the air, lowered its head, and looked at a pair of older children. Vaska, Yelena. Follow. There is still a lot to do. Come and help. 2 legendary silver dragons, 2 adult silver dragons soaring into the sky. It flew higher and higher, becoming smaller and smaller as it flew, and finally disappeared into the bright sunshine. Ah! Gretel leaned back, spread out his hands and feet, and lay on Cyrilla's back. I lay there for a few breaths before I remembered and asked. Cyrilla, where are your parents? Can you help me? I do not know. Cyrilla flapped her wings twice, hovered in circles, and slowly fell. His slender neck was drooped, and his voice was muffled and a little low. They never told me. They never told me. Suddenly they went out, suddenly flew away. I asked them, and they told me every time that I was still young. When I was a baby, I was still young. When I became a teenager, I was still young. When I was able to travel, I was still young. I have grown up. Already an adult. Why are you blocking me behind every time? I'm not that weak. Perhaps the matter is very troublesome and requires legendary dragons to handle it, or senior adult dragons to help. Gretel patted the thorns on her back, then squatted down and patted her back. Cyrilla and I will work hard together, continue to research, and continue to advance. Maybe we will be able to help in a few years. Well. Cyrilla dropped to the ground dejectedly. After putting Gretel down, she saw a group of friends coming up to her. She regained a little energy and raised her arms and shouted. Follow me. I know this place well. Gretel, Do you want to build the mage tower first, or do you want to go check out the surrounding tribes first? Gretel looked around. Before he could say anything, someone shouted and climbed up on the mountain road under the dragon's nest. Mao Mao donated to a poor top student today, 1-to-1 targeted donation, through Tencent charity channel. To accumulate blessings for my father, I hope that my father will be well and will always be well. Place your palms together, place your palms together, place your palms together. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Jialan 2020. Chapter 1461. What's the situation? What's the situation? Beside Gretel, a group of people poked their heads and looked down. Even the maple tree Servilia stretched out a branch, put it on Bernard's shoulder, and stretched out from in front of him to the outside of the cliff. What's going on? Who's shouting? Are they local aboriginals? Has anyone called? But no matter how fast these people are, they can't be faster than Turnbaka. The tern folded its wings and flew down quickly, as if shooting a sharp white arrow from the sky. When he arrived near the group of climbers, he circled twice, chirped a few more times, then flapped his wings and flew back. It's a giant. So big, I don't understand. Gretel smiled. Although Turnbaka has flown thousands of miles, he probably does not like to chat and interact with local intelligent races everywhere. After going back and forth so many times, I can't even understand the words of the local race. Although the intelligent races here on Long Island may be more diverse, they have been chatting for 2 or 3 months every year for decades or hundreds of years. How can I understand them? God. He raised his hand and slapped a language master and a glagi. Language comprehension manages translation, allowing the subject to understand the speaker's language. Spoken words controls the output, allowing the subject to naturally understand the words spoken by the subject. 2 blessing spells can last for at least 2 or 3 hours at Gretel's current level. After taking the photo, he bowed his hand to Baka. Please, help me ask again if it's an emergency, we'll come down right away. Baka shot another arrow. After a while, I spread my wings and flew up. Before I arrived, I was already shouting. It's their old wizard. It's their old wizard who's very ill. He came here to ask for help. It's 3 hills away from here. It's not urgent, but it's very serious. As expected. Gretel let out a breath and nodded. After experiencing an aboriginal request for help from Sarah's aunt, Ms. Ophelia, he already understood a common sense. The dragon clan, especially the silver dragon, their dragon nest is roughly equivalent to a medical point within a few hundred miles. If the nearby indigenous residents have any ailments that they can't handle on their own, the ultimate solution is, go to the dragon's nest. Of course, the silver dragon's nest is usually on the top of a very high mountain. The road is long and difficult to travel, and the power of the silver dragon is everywhere. The difficulty of getting there is even worse than that of patients in remote mountainous areas who want to go to Peking Union Medical College to see a doctor. At the very least, as long as people in remote mountainous areas have access to modern transportation, the next step is trains, planes, and subways. Then I'm going down. He nodded towards Cyrilla and took a step forward. I wanted to activate the dragon flying technique, but I felt weak and almost fell down. The transformation of the silver dragon just now took away its strength, so it was enough to throw in 1 or 2 low-level spells. The dragon flying technique really couldn't sustain it. In this state, you really have to save some money, and you have to treat people when you go somewhere. He shook it like this, and APA rushed out immediately, changed back to his original shape, and turned his head to grab Gretel on his back. A sure move, but nothing came of it. Cyrilla had already transformed into a dragon. The dragon's wings flapped gently, and a whirlwind swept up Gretel and placed it on her back. Fly up, dive down, and give orders along the way. Baka, lead them. As he spoke, he flew out at high speed, bringing up billowing air waves that pushed the Turnbaka backwards in several circles. If it hadn't flapped its wings in time to stabilize its body, it would have almost hit the stone wall. Even so, in front of the silver dragon, the Tern had nothing to complain about and shouted. "Okay. Come with me." He followed closely. Idian, Ashu Isong and others looked at each other, flew and ran, and followed as fast as possible. Bernard roared and ran at an earth-shattering speed. The maple tree Servilia jumped lightly and turned into a 2-meter-high sapling. She jumped onto his shoulder without any explanation. Bernard held her back and used her as a hiking pole. She was slapped by the maple tree. "Carry me well. Don't poke my roots into the ground." At the critical moment, it was Appa who transformed back into his silver moon deer form, rushed forward bravely, and humped the barbarians. However, his girlfriend, the unicorn Shiloh, ran to the almost vertical edge of the dragon's nest, but she couldn't get down. I craned my neck to look at it several times, and was so anxious that I scratched my hooves and screamed wildly. Apa didn't have any good solutions for this. Among the few instinctive spells he had awakened, there was no way to deal with this situation. It was AI-11 UGE who returned in time, blessed Shiloh with a feather falling technique, and led her to jump down. Greed turned a blind eye to this bustle, but ignored it. He sat on Sirira's back and closed his eyes to meditate, racing against time to regain his strength. Alas, it would be nice if he were stronger. If only he could transform into an adult silver dragon and be able to sustain it for 1 hour, 2 hours, or even more. In that case, there would be no need for Baka the Tern to explore the way ahead, and no need for Cyrilla to transform into his original form and carry him on his back in person. He can turn himself into a silver dragon and fly as far as he wants and as fast as he wants. When you arrive at your destination, you don't have to waste time explaining to the patient. Just as he was thinking this, a slight feeling of weightlessness came over his body, and Cyrilla had stopped. His strong hind paws scratched the rocks, and he lowered his head from the high hillside with a clear voice. "Which tribe are you from? Where do you live? Who needs treatment?" Greed held the thorn to steady his body and took a few steps forward before he saw the natives standing below. As expected, he was tall and stocky. Standing on the mountain path, his height seemed to be about the same as Cyrilla's head length. In other words, if you open your arms to the limit, you can try to hold Cyrilla's head. Of course, the one in dragon form. Greed looked down at his feet on Cyrilla's back, then opened his arms slightly, gestured to Cyrilla's neck, and sighed silently. Wow, the person blocking the road in front is really a giant. He is twice as tall as him, right? His arms were as thick as his waist, and his waist was as thick as a hug. On a cold and windy day, he still felt a little cold even with the cold and heat resistant hanging on his body. The giant was shirtless, with a piece of animal skin randomly wrapped around his waist. "Dear young lady, we are from the Frostfire tribe, living in Laotan Mountain. It was our elder who fell, and no one can cure him. There is nothing we can do." The giant bowed to Cyrilla in fear. The intelligent races on Dragon Island do not have as cumbersome etiquette as humans, and they do not even bow to the ground or kneel down. However, bowing down deeply to show respect is still necessary. As for who is the silver dragon? He does not know the conscience of heaven and earth. Although there is an owner in the dragon's nest here, he cannot be seen 9 times out of 10 times he visits. The silver dragon that occasionally flew by was at least 2 times larger than Zyril. However, any silver dragon is someone they need to respect and someone they can turn to for help. Be respectful, that's for sure. In that direction, over a hill, over another hill, over another hill. Take me. Cyrilla simply waved her claws. A strong wind whipped up and attached the levitation technique to the giant. Gretel threw down an activated rope in tacit cooperation and tied it around the giant's waist. Cyrilla grabbed the other end of the rope and fluttered her wings. Give me the way. Give me the direction. By the way, tell me what's going on with you elders. How old are you? Are you sick or injured? When did something go wrong? What exactly is wrong? Us. Elder. Yesterday. Night. Fall down. The giant hung precariously beneath Cyrilla. The strong wind roared, and he was pulled like a big kite. When he opened his mouth, the cold wind poured into his mouth. She tried hard to answer the question, but Miss Yinlong was still shouting, I can't hear clearly. I had no choice but to shout at the top of my lungs, one word at a time. While Cyrilla was listening to him, she was also busy saying to Greet. I know this tribe. I used to play there a lot when I was a kid. They produce a kind of snow chicken, which is tender and sweet. They are the best blacksmiths in the territory. The nearby tribes who need to make some tools come to them. How fast is the silver dragon? In a few words, we had crossed 3 hills in a row, and stopped near a hill with a gurgling top and yellow smoke constantly coming out. As soon as the giant landed, he immediately untied the rope and ran inside. It's in there. It's in there. Elder. Elder, how are you doing? Okay, let's go in. Gretel jumped off the dragon's back and walked inside with Cyrilla, who had returned to human form. There was a rumble on the hillside, and tall giants emerged one after another from the wooden houses, lining up on both sides and watching them. Greet and Cyrilla glanced at them, then walked side by side into the tallest and largest wooden house in the village. Before entering the door, Greet quickly covered Cyrilla with the bubble technique, but his expression remained unchanged. Despite the sour, fishy, and foul smell, he went straight to the bed. This is the patient? How long has he been ill? Let me see the situation. As he spoke, he threw a spell, and the light screen instantly unfolded, with images and numbers beating constantly, accompanied by a dripping sound. Gretel opened the elder's pupils again, lit a small light source and swung it inside, examined it carefully, and smelled the scent from the elder's mouth. It smelled really bad, and it did smell like rotten apples, but, when he just walked over, he saw a few rotten apples near the bed. 3 or 4 giants stood crowded together at the end of the bed, trying to shrink themselves a little smaller, and then a little smaller, watching Gretel busy here and there, finishing this and that, but not throwing out healing spells. And he didn't fly here by himself, nor does he have pointed ears. Is this a silver dragon? Will it be treated? Finally, a giant had the courage to step forward, bent down deeply, and lowered his head to the level of Gretel's shoulders. Dear sir, may I ask, are you a silver dragon? Gretel? What's the matter? If you are not a silver dragon, why can't you treat people? He looked around, and then looked outside the wooden house at the giants poking their heads. Sighing, his eyes instantly turned into vertical pupils. Yes, I am the silver dragon, that's right. Thanks to it for the 1,500 starting coins. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1462. Bendashu leader adds 6 updates. As soon as his vertical pupils appeared, the giant who asked the question bowed even lower, his forehead almost hitting the bed board. He scraped the ground with his heels and stepped back step by step. Within a few steps, he hit the wall with a bang, and dust from the roof fell. Gretel. If I hadn't had some defensive spells to support me in advance, I would have been completely confused. It doesn't matter if it hurts my head or face. If I were undergoing surgery, wouldn't it fall directly into the wound? Fortunately, he had aided Africa before and had gone to the countryside. After crossing over, he had seen dwarf villages and barbarian tribes everywhere. At this time, without changing his expression, he carefully looked at the various indicators of the old giant. Heartbeat 65, normal, blood oxygen 95, a bit low, fairly normal, breathing 22 times/min, normal. The blood pressure is 190/140, which is considered very high. But for a giant over 3 meters tall, would the blood pressure be a little higher? Theoretically, the normal blood pressure values for adults with a height of 1.4 meters and adults with a height of 1.9 meters are within the same range. However, when he was more than 3 meters tall, he was not sure whether his blood pressure would be high. After all, the pressure required to pump blood to a distance of 0.8 meters should be different from that of pumping blood to a distance of 1.5 meters, right? There was no way he could learn the medical theory of past lives. Is it difficult for him to answer the questions step by step? Modify the questions to make them more difficult and enter the cutting-edge field. Goodbye. While thinking about it, he listened to the young giant next to him reporting on the elders' situation. The Frostfire tribe has a small number of people, only 100 people. They grow food, hunt, and have a few good blacksmiths. From this mountain called Old Spleen Mountain, there are 7 or 8 hills in a row, which are their hunting grounds. The elder is 78 years old, which is considered the oldest among the giants. He has some power of ice and fire, and can also use herbs to heal wounds. It's just that he is older and the hunting is not too difficult, so there is no need for him to take action. This time, the disease occurred because Dragon Nest issued an order requiring several surrounding tribes to pay tribute to a magical beast from each tribe. It needs to be big, high level, and urgent. It will be delivered to nearby tribes within 2 days, and to those farther away, it will be delivered in 5 days. Because of the urgent need, the elder had to go out in person and led a few good hunters in the tribe to fight an ice bear for a whole day. The ice bear fell, and the elder fell down, with blood coming from his eyes and nose. Everyone in the clan kept watch all night. Seeing that the elder's aura was getting weaker and weaker, they had no choice but to rush to the dragon's nest to ask for help. The silver dragon has given him what he asked for, so the person who fell down while doing his job must reach out to save him. Gretel shrank silently, not even daring to say that these monsters were just for him to eat, and he wasted most of them. After hearing this, coupled with his previous assessment, he also had an idea of the elder's situation. High probability, cerebral hemorrhage. Gretel concentrated his attention, flipped his hand, and deployed the CT first. Maple Servilia stood on the opposite side, helped the old giant up and spun around in a circle, moved the tower spirit and the oak staff together, and quickly got the result. Tisk, cerebral hemorrhage. Gretel sighed inwardly. He is not very good at treating cerebral hemorrhage. Patients who fall into his hands are basically hooked up to monitoring equipment to save their lives, and then call neurosurgery. Sometimes I call the neurology department, depending on the patient's condition and where he is available internally and externally. But now, he is the only patient. Looking at the CT scan, the amount of bleeding was greater than 30 ml, the bleeding lasted for more than 12 hours, and it was unknown how much brain cells had been necrotic. Well, the giant's head is much larger than the human head, but the brain does not increase significantly. The amount of bleeding is very scary. Even if I am rescued and my life is saved, I still don't know whether I can wake up or how my recovery will be after I wake up. But no matter what, if you can diagnose it, you can treat it. Without thinking, Gretel first threw a soothing technique on to make the patient calm and lower his blood pressure as much as possible. Then he created water and freeze rays, made an ice cap, and asked the young giant next to him to put it on the old giant to protect his brain. Next, a healing spell was thrown up, covering the old giant's brain. This time, Greed stared at CT, and also released the little snake, letting it sink into the old giant's mind, watching for him with his illusory eyes. The treatment technique slowly began, following the bleeding points shown on the CT scan, scanning slowly and carefully. Healing can stop bleeding and heal wounds, but it can also promote clotting. Casting the spell is too fast and rough, but be sure not to cause blood clots. If the cerebral hemorrhage is not cured, another cerebral infarction may occur. It is said that cerebral hemorrhage and cerebral infarction are often complications during treatment. Cerebral infarction, use thrombolytic drugs, cerebral pressure increases, triggering cerebral hemorrhage and brain herniation, use hemostatic and dehydration drugs, coagulation, then cerebral infarction. Brain blood vessels that are already fragile, calcified, and narrow and blocked often fall into the abyss step by step in such a desperate cycle. In the previous life, whether inside or outside the gods, it was no better than walking on thin ice. At the moment, Greet doesn't have the medicine at his fingertips, nor is he skilled in surgery, so he can only use his heart to treat the patient bit by bit. Stop the bleeding, stop the bleeding, stop the bleeding. The blood vessels in the brain were as fine as a spider web. Under the guidance of CT, the bleeding points were blocked one by one, causing a thin layer of sweat on Gretel's forehead. After using a simple healing technique for 2 hours, he fell back and closed his eyes. It's okay for now. All right. Several thunder-like sounds sounded at the same time, back and forth, left and right. Gretel was so noisy that his head exploded, and he closed his eyes and frowned. Instead, Sirrur reached out to cover his ears and glared at him. What's the quarrel? What's the quarrel? I don't see how tired Gretel is. Get out, get out. Her eyes were like a knife, and she slashed at him with one glance, causing the giants around the hospital bed to tremble. Gretel held her palm with his backhand. Don't bring out Longway. It seems that the patient's blood pressure has risen again. Well, the patient's family members will leave one for me to explain the condition. There will be an operation next. He opened his mouth and let others take care of these things. Gretel just closed his eyes and rested. Cyrilla stayed by his side, wiping his sweat carefully and feeding him water. When everything calmed down outside, a middle-aged giant with a weathered face stood in front of Gretel and bent down deeply. Dear sir, I am the leader of the Frostfire tribe. If you have anything to do, just tell me. Well, the elder's illness has been half cured now. Gretel waved his finger to him tiredly. He fell to the ground and was unconscious because of bleeding in his brain. Pointing at the pictures, he explained everything from the condition to the cause and treatment methods. He had to make a hole in the skull to draw out the accumulated blood. Now that we've finished, let's talk about the prognosis. He may not wake up, he may be paralyzed, hemiplegia may be paralyzed, he may lose his memory, and of course, he may also lose the ability to cast spells. The middle-aged giant kept bowing and waiting quietly. When Gretel finished speaking, he nodded repeatedly. Sir, we understand. Your willingness to treat the elder is a great favor. You can treat him however you think you need, and we will have absolutely no objections. The patient's family members were also too cooperative with Alexander. Saying this means that all the pressure has been put on the doctor. The patient's family members said with tears in their eyes, we don't understand anything, it all depends on you. Greet sighed, waved him away, and opened the mage's cabin. In the clean operating room, drilling, drainage, and treatment were performed again, and the dissected meninges, skull, and skin were closed layer by layer. Well, I've done everything I can do, and my blood pressure has dropped. Mannitol, although I extracted a lot of mannitol from kelp, I still don't dare to give people intravenous infusions casually. If you can't use it, don't use it. Gretel sighed and sat down beside the operating table. I threw in a few more healing spells to at least save the suffering brain cells. I expanded my mental power and tried to explore the old giant's situation. The breath of life is steadily increasing, and it seems that his life is on the line. He should not die this time. His mental power seems to be increasing, but unfortunately he doesn't have the brainwave equipment from the confusion control system, so he can't confirm whether his spellcasting ability is showing signs of recovery. The ability to summon magic, huh? Why is there vague frost swirling around this old man? A small flower, kept blooming and falling to the ground, blooming little frost flowers on his old skin. It's not good, the old man's body temperature is dropping rapidly. No, it's not that the body temperature is dropping rapidly, but that he is unconsciously stimulating the power of ice and snow. This old man hasn't woken up yet, and he has already begun to use magic power? Should he wake up? Or should we give him a break and let him completely enter a deep coma? Greet was momentarily confused. As his mental power continued to deepen, he suddenly discovered that a bright spot of light was flashing in the old man's brain. Swelling and shrinking, every beat attracts a lot of frost power. How to deal with this situation? I've never seen it. Gretel turned his head blankly and looked at his companions behind him. Sirara's face was even more confused than his, and she had no idea what he was struggling with. Ashuej frowned and looked at the old man, thoughtfully. However, Udian took a step forward and said in a certain tone. His magical power has gone wild. We need to comb him quickly, otherwise he will freeze himself. Before, compatriots' power was out of control, and this is what the elders did. How to comb it? Well. Yes, theoretical school. Gretel took a deep breath, and could only recall a few words of the elf elder, trying hard to cover the dot of light with her mental power. Then, carefully, and according to the rules of meditation, shape the light spots into a spell configuration, then another spell configuration, and another spell configuration. Fortunately, this group of light spots seems to be many, but it is not used much. Gretel constructed a freeze ray, a secondary cold sphere, an ice dagger and a frozen path, which almost consumed the power of the light spot. After waiting patiently for a while, the old man coughed and opened his eyes with difficulty. Oh, I'm awake. I said, other people's brains are filled with water, but your brain is almost frozen. By the way, how do you use the power of ice, and why can't you control it? Cough 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 cough, our tribe has a little bit of silver dragon blood, so. Gretel instantly turned his head and looked at Cyrilla. I can't tell, but Silver Dragon is pretty good at playing. No, this is not a matter of spending money or not. What about the aesthetics of Silver Dragon? Can a giant even open his mouth? It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1463. Hey! What's the look in your eyes? Cyrilla immediately became furious. The Silver Dragon girl has been traveling for decades, and she is no longer the little girl who only knew how to eat and sleep under her parents' knees. With a glance, she knew what Gretel was thinking. What do you think we are? How is that possible? As he spoke, his eyebrows were raised, his cheeks were slightly red, and there was even a thin trace of red on the corners of his eyes. Obviously he was very annoyed. Gretel quickly apologized. Hey, that's not what I meant, I just meant that there seem to be many species with the aura of dragons. I'm curious how this came about, after all, dragons are so big. What did you say? It's because the chromosomes are big. It's because the chromosomes are so big. Gretel was sweating on his forehead and quickly found an excuse. Logically speaking, with such a large-scale chromosome, the chromosomes of other races are just a little bit small and cannot be inserted into it. Cyrilla snorted and turned her head away from him, but the expression on her face softened a little. Then I heard the giant elder say. No, it's not like that. Lie down. Gretel jumped up and pushed him down. Finally, he had some idea of his own strength. He jumped 2 feet away from the operating table and stopped. Two high-level mage hands flew out and held down the giant elder. Hey, I can't seem to press it down, add two more, add two more. Lie down. I can just ask someone else to ask about this kind of thing. You just woke up. You lie down and rest. Cough, cough, they don't know what happened a long time ago, only me, only me. Greet quickly threw a hypnotic spell over. If one shot is not enough, add another powerful shot. When the old giant fell on the bed, snoring slightly, he walked over with a smile and held Sarala's hand. Don't be angry, I'm really just curious about the dragon's chromosomes. You know, I've been studying chromosomes for a while, and the dragon is the most amazing one I've seen. After all kinds of coaxing, Sarala's face turned around. Gretel closed the operating room, accompanied her out of the big wooden house, and waited outside for a night. It was not until the next day that she heard the full story. Dragon clan, the noble dragon clan, not every dragon egg can be hatched, and not every hatched dragon can awaken its true name. Those dragons that have not been able to awaken their true names and have no wisdom, and their parents are unwilling to abandon them, will be handed over to us for worship, and then, when they grow to adulthood. Greet could only be glad that Sarala had gone to play around and was not here with him to listen to stories. The conscience of heaven and earth turns out to be not the heavy talk of the dragon clan, but the fact that these giants will do whatever it takes for the blood of the dragon clan. As the saying goes, put the 5-colored wild horses at the foot of the mountain, waiting to be bred with the Pegasus, they are still horses after all. You are giants. It's a giant. There is a species difference between him and the dragon beast. Won't you raise strange children like this? What do you mean by a strange child? After a night of recuperation, the old giant had become more energetic. Now he was leaning on a tree pillar more than 1 meter wide, stretching his hands and legs, and talking to Gretel. Is the two-headed giant a strange child? Our tribe once had one who was the offspring of the first-generation dragon beast and had powerful frost abilities. Thanks to him, we expanded our territory several times, and the tribe grew to more than 200 people. Gretel's first reaction was to say, the two heads are deformed, he must be a strange child. The second reaction was, how can two heads be delivered through the birth canal? Is it really possible without a cesarean section? The third reaction was, more than 200 people, this is just a small village. As the words reached his mouth, he swallowed them back one by one. Survival is difficult, especially in the wilderness close to the polar regions. It would be a good thing to have a child with powerful frost power, even a child with a dragon beast, even a child with two heads. As for the more than 200 people, they have been in and out of the Frostfire tribe in the past 2 days. The total number of people in this tribe is less than 100. The increase to more than 200 is equivalent to doubling the tribe's population, which is indeed a very high achievement. Then, are there any two-headed descendants of that two-headed giant? No more, or in other words, no one left alive. When talking about this issue, the old giant's face was filled with regret. The stronger you are, the harder it is to survive. The old giant shook his head and sighed again. Besides, we can't let all the women in the entire tribe give birth to his children. We have to divide them into several families so that they can. Being too close by blood is not good for reproduction. Even primitive people know this truth, and these giants are no exception. Greet nodded slightly, then pressed the idea of drawing blood and epithelial cells from these giants, and doing chromosome analysis for everyone, and stood up to leave. Your life has been saved. In the next few days, take a rest and try not to be tired, agitated, or angry. If you have any questions, come to me at any time. I will be at the dragon's nest these days, and I may find a place nearby. Honorable. The old man stood up with difficulty and wanted to salute Gretel. Greet waved his hand. Oh, by the way, if anyone in the tribe is sick, injured, or needs medical treatment, you can come to me. Time is running out, so I'll leave first. He walked away. First, he met up with Cyrilla and others, and under Cyrilla's guidance, he walked around 20 or 30 hills near the dragon's nest. You need to have enough energy to easily set up a mage tower. The transportation must be convenient, and it must be easy for the surrounding tribes to come to see the doctor. In particular, the patient must not be left dying, struggling to survive, and climbing mountains to death. The terrain should be open so that dragons can easily fly down and other large monsters can come to see a doctor. The water needs to be convenient, but not too close to the water source, so as not to discharge some things that should not be discharged and pollute the water source. There must also be a place where Servilia stretches her branches and leaves, a place where Bernard and the others practice martial arts, a place where Ashmoonsong likes the abundant natural power, and a forest where unicorns can roam. These various requirements are not easy to meet. Fortunately, the territory of the legendary Silver Dragon is quite large. Cyrilla grew up here and is quite familiar with every plant and tree here, at least the plants and trees near the dragon's nest. She flew Gretel up and down and around. After running for 7 or 8 days, I finally picked a hill south of the dragon's nest, about 20 to 30 kilometers away from the dragon's nest. Greet initiated the contract and invited the Earth Element Lord to come to the scene. He built a mage tower halfway up the hill, combed the earth veins, and connected nearby energy sources to the mage tower energy pool. The Earth Element Lord stopped building other houses and other things, leaving behind 2 low-level earth elements. Let them come. Whatever you want to do, just tell them. For Earth Element Lords, low-level earth elements are actually above level 10, and turning fossils into mud and mud into stone is extremely smooth. Build residences, build research institutes, build hospitals, build wards, build operating rooms. Build houses according to the size of normal humans, build houses according to the size of barbarians, build houses according to the size of giants, and create caves and lairs according to the size and needs of large monsters. 3 areas and 2 passages, various sealed doors, various disinfection facilities, various water supply, heating, and ventilation facilities. Even if the earth element built the wall like making clay balls and built the house like making clay figures, it still took 2 days to build the hospital that Greet needed. After they left, half of the hillside down from the mage tower was covered with various houses, large and small. Gretel stretched his arms, kicked his legs, and exhaled forcefully. Finally done, now we just need patients and research subjects. Well, how do we notify the surrounding tribes? Shall I ask the guards of the dragon's nest to go? Cyrilla volunteered. They are running around all the time. If Dad needs anything, I ask them to inform him. Anyway, Mom and Dad are out. If I give them orders, they will definitely listen. That's not necessary. Gretel felt a little guilty. As a son-in-law with hairy feet, he is not like a pampered little daughter who can make the person who evokes his father feel confident. Baka, could you please make a trip? Sarah, is there any way to let the surrounding tribes know that Baka is one of ours? It's simple. Without thinking, Sarala took out a piece of dragon scale and hung it around Baka's neck. The shining silver scales and the faint dragon power all indicate the identity of the turn. There is one or several silver dragons standing behind him, and he is speaking on behalf of the silver dragons. Sarara gave something, and Gretel couldn't leave it behind. Looking through the collection, he found a ring with language comprehension and glossary added to it. Use it as an anklet and put it on Baka. Please fly around the surrounding tribes and tell me that I am a high-level healer and will stay here for a while. If you are in need, you can come here. By the way, these houses are all empty. If they need to stay temporarily, please prepare their own furniture and so on. Sarara burst out laughing. Gretel looked at him confidently. Am I wrong? Or do I need to build the furniture for them? Although it is not difficult to rub the furniture with transfiguration hands, barbarians have the size of barbarians, and giants have the size of giants. I don't have time to bother with that. Many. In fact, Gretel didn't even bother to rub the furniture he used. He took out a bed, a desk, and a wardrobe from the space equipment, and that was all done. What? Cyrilla. Cyrilla had a huge dragon's nest. She poured her collection on it and slept so soundly. She wouldn't change any of the 2.5-meter large beds, fluctuating water beds, and silk 4-piece suits. In fact, Gretel really didn't have to worry about furniture. The Turnbaka had just flown around, and the next day, the giants of the Frostfire tribe came to the door in a mighty manner. Logging, splitting boards, and repairing furniture nearby filled up half of the hospital. The tribal elders who had just been cured knelt down in front of Gretel with a plop. "Dear healer, please save our tribe. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right?" Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 1464. Bandashu leader adds update 7. Save their tribe. What's the situation? Gretel came out of the newly built research room. His head was still focused on the pile of chromosomes, and his reaction was a bit slow. Save. What can be saved? Sarah's parents, a pair of legendary silver dragons, ruled dozens of intelligent tribes, large and small. Small fights in daily life are not allowed, but fighting each other to the point of annihilation is not allowed. A silver dragon has a kind nature and has a low tolerance for unprovoked killing. Whoever wants to be killed for no reason and blood will flow like a river must be prepared to be killed like a river of blood. Secondly, the silver dragon looked at the intelligent races in its territory. Even if they were not their subjects, they were still their property. Inexplicably, a lot of one's property has been lost, and everyone has to inquire. Who allowed you to destroy my property indiscriminately? So when it comes to saving a person, Gretel is confident, but when it comes to saving a tribe, he doesn't know where to start. He shook his head, and seeing the old giant's pale face, he waved his hand again. Speak slowly and don't be anxious. If I can save you, I will of course save you, but you also need to know what the problem is, right? The old giant sighed and softened. The giant was tall. He was kneeling on the ground. He was a head taller than Gretel. Now he softened and simply fell to the ground. Greet took a few steps back with a stiff face. When he slowly calmed down, he sat up and huddled up, barely equal to his own height, and then walked over to listen to him. Last night, the dragon beast suddenly came to our tribe. It came right away. We provided it with food, drink, and rest. This is what we are used to doing. Who knows, who knows? When he said this, his body trembled, and tears poured down from his muddy old eyes, making the ground wet in a small circle in a moment. Greet frowned slightly. How? Who knew that it suddenly became angry and bit everywhere? 2 of the children in the tribe were killed on the spot and 1 was bitten. We resisted desperately and then escaped. We injured it while resisting, seriously. Why didn't you tell me earlier? Greet stood up immediately. A group of giants came to work with him without meeting him, and no one told him that someone was injured. Now he was walking hurriedly outside, with the old giant hunched over beside him. For any injuries, we can just wrap them up ourselves and don't dare to alarm the adults. It's just that dragon beast, that dragon beast. How about the dragon beast? I don't know, please ask Dragon Nest for mercy and save us. We really didn't mean to hurt it, how dare we? No matter how unintelligent the dragon beast is, it is still the biological child of the legendary silver dragon. It is kept in the mountains and is only allowed to be worshipped but not harmed. It fell on its own, fell, and was bitten to death by wild beasts. It only took its life. Being beaten to death and injured by these intelligent races, if the silver dragon pursues them, the entire tribe will be in catastrophe. Is there no precedent before? What will Dragon Nest do in this situation? I don't know. My grandfather, my grandfather's grandfather, have never encountered. Gretel sighed. This is the difficulty of having no history, no writing, and no inheritance. How to deal with any situation depends entirely on word of mouth. At this giant's age, things that happened about 100 years ago would have to be folded in half when they were transmitted to him. Things that happened 200 years ago would be left with only one fold, which is quite a lot. If the attacking dragon beast is injured, what will be the reaction from the dragon nest? They definitely didn't know and didn't dare to gamble, so they brought their whole family to beg for help. Although Gretel felt that the legendary silver dragon was not unreasonable and would not vouch for them, he nodded slightly, quickened his pace, and patrolled around. As expected, many of the giants of the Frostfire tribe were injured. Gretel casually took out a healing spell to stabilize their situation first, and took a deep breath. I'll go over and take a look. As he spoke, he flicked his fingertips, and a spark rose into the sky with a scream and exploded high. For a moment, Baka, the tern, folded its wings and flew down. A moment later, Sarala came in a hurry and said when they met. What's the matter? Something happened to the Frostfire tribe. The dragon beast was seriously injured. I'm going to take a look. Greet explained the situation in a few words and asked Baka. Please go to the dragon's nest and talk to the guards of the dragon's nest. See if you can come over and take a look at the situation, or whether there is any precedent for this matter and how it was handled. Baka nodded and flew up, and Gretel said to Sarala again. I'll go over and take a look. If I can save it, I'll save it. It's a life anyway. Do you want to wait here? Or help me treat those giants? I'll go with you. Sarala shook her head. When she heard the word dragon beast, she felt a little flustered for some reason, and her heart was beating hard. Recalling it carefully, I feel like I heard my parents talk about it, but I didn't hear them talk about it in person. It seems that it is also in the inherited memory, but I can't think clearly for a while. In short, it is a very terrible thing, very bad and terrible. Then go take a look even more. Before Greet could refuse again, Sarala had already changed back to her original form. With a lift of her wings, a gust of wind swept Gretel onto her back. Let's go. The adult silver dragon flew very fast, and Greet only heard the whistling of the wind, and within a moment, he arrived at Old Temp Mountain. Before landing, I could see something strange at a glance. Near the mountainside, the neat wooden houses were swaying here and there and were in a complete mess. The bonfire overturned, the fur flew away, and the smoke continued to rise, but the utensils and shrubs were ignited, and the flames were not extinguished. Half of the largest wooden house was collapsed, and a small silver dragon lay beside the wooden house, half inside and half outside. His head hung on the ground, and he let out a feeble roar from time to time, but he could no longer struggle. Ah! Sarala saw the little dragon from a distance, and for some reason, a chill instantly ran through her heart. She was trembling with fear, her wings suddenly lost strength, and her whole body fell in the air. Gretel quickly stood up. Featherfall technique. With the feather falling technique in the hands of a 15th level magician fully activated, it is not difficult to hold up an adult silver dragon. Sarala floated leisurely, swaying all the way down, and was about to fall to the top of the forest before she woke up, quickly flapped her wings, and pulled up. Go back. Go back. Gretel, I don't want to look. Let's go back. Sarala, you go back first. Gretel couldn't leave the injured alone. He patted Sarala comfortingly, ran a few steps quickly, and jumped down. He launched his flying technique in mid-air and ran towards the little dragon. Before he reached it, he threw 2 healing techniques down. After getting closer, I realized that the little dragon was not too small. It was about the same size as Cyrilla's young dragon, but its condition was very bad. The scales are mottled, no longer as smooth as a mirror, and there are even many places where they have fallen off. The dragon horns on the head, the dragon wings behind the back, and even the row of thorns on the back are all worn out, and many of the thorns are even broken. There were several spears or tree trunks poked into the abdomen, and the wound was raised high. There was a pool of blood around it, and there was also a pool of blood around the mouth, different colors. Maybe it had really eaten a few giants. There may be injuries in other places, and I couldn't see clearly for a while. I only saw it lying on the ground, unable to get up. No matter what, just stay alive. Gretel sighed, raised his hand and threw a few healing spells at it, trying to kill it first. Next is a powerful tranquility spell to make it fall asleep. Then throw a large piece of floating magic over it, levitate it, and move it into the mage's mansion, the hospital version, and then look at the injury. Tisk, there was a big gash on my stomach, and the intestines leaked out. After such a long time, I hope there are no major problems with other organs. There is no other way. Let's throw away the cleaning technique first, debridement as much as possible, and remove the contaminants and blood. Then use the mage's hand to stuff the intestines in and seal the wound. Then throw out a piece of legendary equipment and quickly do a CT scan to see other organs. After this was done, someone was knocking on the door of the master's mansion. Greed casually ordered an invisible servant to open the door, and saw the half-dragon Sokka, the guard captain from the dragon lair, rushing over. Seeing Gretel taking care of him, he was slightly relieved. Gretel didn't look back and asked him while looking at the CT. Is there any precedent for this kind of thing? Yes, Sokka bowed and lowered his head. Although Greed is a human being, he is also a person recognized by Miss Cyrilla. In other words, he should not be treated as a master, but must be treated as a half-master. There were dragon beasts in the previous generations. We will verify it. As long as it is not a deliberate attack, the owner will not pursue it. When it is cured, take it to other places and the tribe will return to its original place to live. Then I'll trouble you. Gretel responded without stopping. Seeing that he was very busy, with green leaves all around him, and thousands of branches hanging down from the oak staff to support the dragon beast, Sokka even kept pace with the 6 dark gold skeletons around him, bowed, and quietly exited. Greed was left alone inside, debriding, draining away the fluid, repairing the organs, and repairing the intestines. After closing the abdomen layer by layer, I threw a few spells to hang up the vital signs of the dragon beast, and carefully collected the blood and cut tissue. Then the mage's mansion was lifted and the dragon beast was moved out. Okay, it's cured. After a while, it should be able to. Before he finished speaking, he saw Cyrilla standing in the forest from a distance, looking at him. Her little face was pale and there was no blood at all. Gretel's heart skipped a beat, and she quickly walked over and held her hand. What's wrong, Cyrilla? He is my brother. Cyrilla's whole body trembled, she threw herself into Gretel's arms and hugged his waist hard. He is my younger brother, he was hatched but failed to awaken his true name and has no wisdom. He cannot be considered a member of the dragon clan or my family, but he is still my younger brother. Gretel crossed his arms and stroked her vest over and over again, from top to bottom, from bottom to top. Cyrilla's trembling gradually stopped, and suddenly, she grabbed Gretel's sleeve. Gretel, think of a way. I don't want our children to become like this, our children don't want to turn into dragon beasts. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 1465. Is this talking about children? Is the progress a little too fast? I haven't officially proposed yet. We're not engaged yet. We are still 1,000 miles away from getting married, at least we have to wait until after my legend. It's like that thing in the legend that the first time I saw you, I thought of our child's name before I got to this point, you already wondered whether the child would become a dragon beast. Although her heart was full of turmoil and these random thoughts, Gretel did not dare to say a word. He gently patted Cyrilla's back, speaking softly and slightly coaxingly. No, no Cyrilla, you are a dragon and I am a half-elf. Our child should not be a pure-blood dragon, nor will he become a dragon. Cyrilla's whole body went limp and she lay in Greet's arms, resting her chin heavily on his shoulder. Gretel patted her slowly and listened to her whisper. I didn't remember it originally, it happened when I was just born and hatched. I had already forgotten it, I just saw it and suddenly remembered it. Her slender body trembled slightly. After hatching, awakening the dragon clan or becoming a dragon beast is actually just a thin line. From the moment the little dragon hatches from the egg, opens its eyes, and finishes chewing the eggshell, it needs to receive a huge amount of dragon inheritance. If you can accept it and awaken your true name, you are the true dragon. Those who can't accept it, whose sanity has been destroyed by inheritance, who can't awaken their true name, and who can't have reason, are the dragon beasts. The parents work so hard to lay several eggs, eager to provide them with the best conditions in the world, and watched them hatch without blinking for several years. Waiting and looking forward to the day of hatching, the good child turned into a beast without any knowledge. If it is an ordinary beast, it is absolutely impossible for a dragon beast to transform into a magical beast, advance step by step, and develop wisdom. I'm so scared, it was almost me, Gretel, I'm so scared. Don't be afraid, it's all over. Don't be afraid. Greet patted her back repeatedly, her long silver hair swaying in front of him, brushing between her mouth and nose, the cold fragrance filling her nose. This little girl, who had been fearless since the first time they met, threw herself into his arms like this for the first time, full of fear and dependence. Don't be afraid, it's okay. Nothing will happen to you, and nothing will happen to our child. Gretel comforted her over and over again, and Cyrilla suddenly straightened her body, distanced herself a little, and stared into his eyes. Gretel, do you have any way to solve this problem? It is already very difficult for the dragon family to have children. Parents, aunts, brothers, and sisters, I really can't bear to make them sad anymore. Her silver blue eyes were filled with moisture, becoming increasingly deep and blue, filled with hope and trust. Gretel sighed silently, wanting to smile bitterly. Sarah, let me tell you something, you may have too high expectations for me. It involves the most fundamental secrets of the dragon clan, the birth and inheritance of the dragon clan, the soul, magic and some higher level things. I may not be able to solve such a difficult problem. And, this issue must have been studied by countless dragons from ancient times to the present, those dragon legends, those stronger ones above the legends, etc., etc., they must have studied it. If they can't solve the problem, why can I solve it? This is not a purely physical problem, nor is it a problem that can be solved by messing with chromosomes. I haven't reached legend yet. I'm still 5 levels away from becoming a legend. However, looking at Cyrilla's watery eyes, Gretel really couldn't say the words I might not be able to do it. He could only sigh softly. I'll give it a try, Sarah, I'll try my best. You have to give me time, really, this question is too difficult. I don't have a clue right now. You have to give me time. Cyrilla pursed her lips tightly and nodded slightly. Gretel took her arm, turned around halfway, and walked out. When they reached the center of the Frostfire tribe's village, the half-dragon Sokka had already hurried over and bowed to them. It's been taken care of. The Frostfire tribe can return to their original place to live at any time, so there's no need to be afraid. Gretel nodded to him. After pondering for a moment, he looked at Sokka's pointed and long face with scales on the edges, but hesitated to speak. Sokka looked at his face and asked carefully. "Excuse me, do you have any other needs?" "I have a question. I would like to ask where your dragon bloodline comes from. If possible, let me take a DNA test." Greed was silent for a moment, swallowed these words back, and changed the subject. "Excuse me, when will Cyrilla's parents come back? If I want to talk to them about something, can I contact them?" "Unless there is a major change, the master will generally come back only once every 10 to 20 years. In special emergencies, there is a communication device in the dragon's nest, but it can only send signals and chat. I'm afraid it won't work." The half-dragon Sokka answered respectfully. He glanced at Greed quickly and added cautiously. "However, Master Vaska and Master Yelena, generally speaking, will come back once every 2 to 3 years. If you have any needs, you can convey them through these two adults." "That's it?" Greed looked up at the sky. Above the zenith, invisible to his naked eyes, were flying several, or rather a group of giant dragons. They stay, they live, they may be exploring, fighting, or guarding. That is the responsibility of the legendary dragon. The mature dragon and the senior adult dragon may also be able to help. However, dragons like Cyrilla who have just entered adulthood are undoubtedly excluded. "Then I'll wait until Vaska and the others come back." Griddle nodded, holding Sarah in his arms, and returned to the hospital. Seeing Cyrilla pouting and refusing to leave, he explained softly. "Let's go back first. This project cannot be completed in a day or two. The preliminary preparations will take a long time. Well, let's find the Frostfire tribe first and get some research materials." He returned to the hospital and briefly explained the situation. The old giant fell to the ground again with a plop and burst into tears. "Sir, thank you so much, thank you so much, we really don't know how to repay your grace." "Hey, the next sentence won't be our tribesmen are willing to commit themselves to each other, right? No. Not to mention the mismatch in body shape, I have Cyrilla. Sir, if you don't mind, please allow us to live here and guard the door for you." Fortunately, the old giant did not propose such an outrageous plan. "Although our tribe is poor, we can still provide you and your friends with daily food and do some daily errands for you." "Ah, that's not necessary." Gretel thought for a moment, watching a group of giants cleaning, cooking, washing sheets and bandages in his hospital, and shuddered silently. "If you really want to repay me, you and your tribe can do two things for me." "You said it. As long as it is your request, we will definitely do it. First, everyone in the Frostfire tribe should come and check me out and collect data. Don't worry, there will be no pain or damage. In addition, everyone should take a little blood, just a little bit." The old giant actually didn't understand what checking it again and collecting data meant. But he understood the next few sentences, and for the benefactor of the tribe, this request was completely trivial. "Don't worry. Don't talk about taking a little blood, even if each person puts a bowl of blood, we won't have a problem." "Ah, this is really unnecessary." Gretel smiled. "Second, the Frostfire tribe sends 2 people, just 2 are enough, and they don't need to be good hunters or important members to guard the door for me and receive patients who come in the future." "Ah, only 2. 2 will do. 2 and 2, each tribe, or each intelligent race, leave 2 people to help. The hospital's handyman staff will be enough. There are too many people and it's useless." The old giant looked full of regret. In fact, he really wanted to bring the entire tribe over, but he had to listen to the dragon tribe. The next best thing was to send his disciples, the next generation elders of the tribe, and the clan leader's youngest son together. Then, he shouted to everyone to line up to be inspected. "Answer some questions, measure your height, weigh you, stand still, sit there, lie still, your body will be surrounded by various colored lights. His body was covered with strange liquids, and he was touched here and there. He raised his head, lowered his head, held his breath, and raised his legs as required. Finally, each person had a little blood drawn, which was not enough to fill a tube as big as a finger. Then he opened his mouth and was scraped twice. All done, next one. Gretel, what are you doing? Cyrilla looked around eagerly. When will we start studying our matter? No hurry, no rush, I still need to collect information. Gretel gave all these basic information such as height, weight, blood pressure, breathing and heartbeat to the tower spirit in the mage tower to collect and organize, while he immersed himself in a pile of chromosomes. Well, judging from the calculation results of the tower spirit and the oak staff, there is no essential difference between the dragon beast's chromosomes and Cyrilla's chromosomes. The number of chromosome pairs is the same and the number of chromosome points is basically the same. To talk about the differences, firstly, the number and proportion of golden dots in Cyrilla's chromosomes are significantly higher than those of dragon beasts. Furthermore, the number of chromosome points in Cyrilla's chromosomes is slightly higher than that of the dragon beast. It's not too much, just a few dozen, but when you think about the information contained in these dozens of points, it's really scary to think about it. It is said that the inheritance of the dragon family includes what the ancestors saw and heard, the magic, martial arts and knowledge learned by the ancestors, as well as the understanding of high-level power by the ancestors. Cyrilla, is the inherited power of your dragon clan written in the chromosomes.